Riker's Iron presents.
Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, to Riker's Iron No Quarter Prime review of Issue 2. In this issue, there's 7 sections. The 7 sections are Fire and Forge, Escalation to War, Part 2. Company of Iron, Sanctum of Dawn. Hostile Territory, Fellig. After Action Report, 12 Faction of Christmas, CID. Paint and Hobby, Table Ready in 5 Steps, Part 2. Warmachine and Hordes, Unbound. Theme Forces, Forces of the TrollBloods, Northkin. So as you can see, there's a lot of content in this magazine. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to give you guys a spoiler-free review, so you don't have to worry about too many things being given away in the magazine. We'll be going over some of the things to help out, especially the Unbound rules. So if you were curious about how to set up an Unbound game, I will cover that in the Unbound review section. So let's dive in. It's prime time, folks. So issue 2 of No Quarter Prime kicks off with Fire and Forge, Escalation to War Part 2. Part 2 of the Escalation series picks up where the first left off following the invasion of Lael and the aftermath of the first months of 605 AR. Within the section, there's stories and background on the Crick's rise in the area, Gorshade's actions during this period, the hard beginnings of Menoth's Holy Crusade, and the consequences of the Harbinger of Menoth's appearance. Escalation Part 2 concludes with Signar's involvement in the early months as they attempt to regain lost ground from Khador and support their Laelese allies. There's kind of a cool final tale in the conclusion of the section that tells the story of Kane's involvement in the temporary recovery of Riversmet from the Kandorian Winter Guard, and introduces some new character solos like the Master Sergeant Bastian Falk. Which is pretty cool. It's a very cool story. Then they cover his Bastion's big honkin' mage lock scatter gun, which they touch on a little bit in the story. It's definitely pretty damn cool little fluff. So Fire and Forge Escalation Part 2 continues the expectations set in the previous issue. While far shorter compared to the first issue, it had a bigger variety and of great background, great stories, and great characters to follow along. And it's a really good section for new and veteran players to kind of get a meaty grip on some of the expanded universe beyond from what took place in No Quarter Prime. So Section 2 of the book is Company of Iron, Sanctum of Dawn. Sanctum of Dawn is another Company of Iron continuous mini-campaign that has the Legion of Everblight, led by the recently released solo Kralix, raiding the Sanctum, defended by Menoth warder Elias Gade, who's also a recently released solo. It's kind of a cool little tie-in for their launches for that month. The story behind the campaign is Kralix wants to acquire the third arc of Calamon, named after the Priest King who centuries ago built the temple to house these dangerous, creepy artifacts. Meanwhile, Elias Gade and his little group of knights is there to retrieve the arc and move it to a more secure location because he knows something's going down. He knows some bad things are coming, particularly Legion. The campaign has 4 scenarios, and each has bonuses and pitfalls for winner and losers that carry over to the next session. So you have that that mini campaign that you can play through. The cool thing about these is they're not specific to those solos and to those characters, so you can play those scenarios and play them out with whatever group you are currently using to play Company of Iron with. The Company of Iron portion of issue 2 also continues to have my favorite thing that issue 1 had: background fluff and alternate paint schemes on esteemed hunting parties for Legion and errant interdictions of renown for Menoth. In addition to the fluff in the background, they also have published the official Dismounted Dragoon points and requisition costs. So for you guys out there looking to use your Dragoons and your mounted models, sitting there being like, I have this model, he's clearly, I could use him, I should be able to use him. You finally have the ability to do so, and it gives you all the costs for the currently released ones. Any ones that will be released later will be published in the No Quarter, as they have in the past with issue 1 listing requisition costs for the new released models. It appears all the Dragoons that are represented that are currently out, their cost is pretty much what I expected, between 4 and 5 points. So pretty much like an average solo to a little bit above average solo cost. Privateer Press has found a great little segment of their magazine to support their new skirmish game, and I look forward to more and more to this part of the magazine every issue that comes out. So far, this issue and the previous issue have just skyrocketed my anticipation for more and my desire for more regarding Company of Iron. It has more new content and great gameplay we were promised when they initially announced the No Quarter Prime, and it's something that I'm looking for in a hobby/tabletop magazine, so a lot more expanded content and hobby stuff and background things. So great job. This is one of the best sections in the book, and I look forward to the issue 3's Company of Iron content. Section 3 of the book is Hostile Territory, Fellig. This month's Hostile Territory features a great 4.5-page history spread that covers the origins of the city of Fellig going back to 3500 BR. That's before Revolution, for those of you guys who do not know. The section contains its geography. Sadly, no maps. I was hoping for some maps. They didn't have maps. That all leads up to a summary of its current history and conflicts mentioned in the Mark II fluff and the stories of Skull Island expedition novels. So if those of you who have been following along, there's been a little bit of history and background detailed in the Skull Island novels. Hostile Territory also contains a 3-player battle scenario where one player defends the city of Fellig from 2 invading forces, so it's kind of a cool 3-player fight. The section also at the very end concludes with a terrain tutorial on how to make ruined walls and Fellig cannon emplacements. Really, really great little hobby section, and it's really a nice addition to the book, because a lot of the book actually doesn't have those hobby and building tutorials, which is kind of shocking given that that's what I'm kind of expecting from No Quarter Prime. Hostile Territory is quickly becoming one of my favorite parts of No Quarter. Not only does it outline a great fluff of key places in Western Immorin, it also contains battle scenarios, hobby terrain with special rules, and just expanded content for all of your tabletop battles in the Iron Kingdoms universe. Section 4 of the book is After Action Report, 12 Factions of Christmas CID. After Action, 12 Factions of Christmas CID contained a lot more information and great background on the models coming this month from Privateer Press. I particularly enjoyed the Theme Force updates and the previous release models that were reworked also being mentioned. The last issue had issues with not mentioning some of the... it showed the cards, but not mentioning what was the thought process and what was changed about them, which felt like a very much of a miss for that section. This part of the book still suffers from what the last issue felt like too little, too late to the table. So all the info on these minis were already out by the time we got the magazine, and while the comments and the design choices and how the CID went for each model is really fun to read, there isn't enough to give any comparison to previous renditions of those models to really read into the changes. So my wish and my hope for this section in the upcoming issues is to see the previous versions of the cards and see what affected the original design, with comments and thoughts leading to the final release. I know that you can probably find that stuff during the CID for those particular models, but like myself, I don't have time to participate in the CID, and I know there's a lot of people out there who don't get a chance to kind of see it, but it would be nice to have that thought process, that going through those design changes and going through those updates one by one, or even just a couple key ones throughout that CID release. So Section 5 is Table Ready in 5, Part 2, featuring the Mercs and Minions models. This was by far my most hated section of No Quarter Prime Issue 1, and it's returned with vengeance, with another disappointing instructional on getting your models ready for tabletop in 5 steps. The section still assumes you, as a painter, will know what a shade, a highlight, a wash, a glaze, etc. is, and take you on a five-step way to get your Merc, Minions, Grimkin, Cephalix, whatever you're playing for the tabletop, painted up. The section still suffers from the same downfall with the steps not mentioned, like what base colors to use, and steps containing in themselves extra steps. So really some of them are table ready in 12 steps or 15 steps, condensed into 5. The redeeming portion of the section is it covers how to do bases on your minis in 5 steps, which is a pretty legit good tutorial for starters and even veterans. I'd like to see this section removed in issue 3 and replaced with a hobby instructional, like building steampunk trains, themed weapon emplacements, objective markers, like in the old no quarters. If you're looking for instructional painting from Privateer Press, I would highly recommend their YouTube channel videos rather than the content in no quarter. They're by far a million times better, and they've even changed how I've painted a few things. Section 6 of the magazine is Warmachine and Hordes Unbound. As the name suggests, Privateer Press has finally released Mark III Unbound rules for those veterans of the game looking to run large-scale multicaster battles or multiplayer games. The article lays out everything you need to play these massive encounters, including table setup with maps. Not all of them have maps, but most of them have maps. Turn round structure changes, and even a set of really awesome fluff-driven scenarios that have players taking things like taking a high ground during a flood or searching old ancient ruins for lost treasures. Not to give too much away, but here's how to set up a basic Unbound battle. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a tutorial on how to set up a basic Unbound game. I'm not going to give you any of the scenarios or any sort of special setups and alternate rules and things like that, but I will take you through just putting together your army construction / detachments, setting up the board, how big the board is, and how the turn structure works, and how to go from there. So let's start with army construction. So for army construction, each player is going to be playing multiple detachments. So what are detachments? Think of them as 50-point lists led by different warlocks or warcasters. The recommended amount is 3, but you can play 2. And these rules also work for multiplayer, so each player would instead be a detachment, and you would determine the usual turn structure based on how many players you had. Detachments and theme forces, they work slightly different. So your theme force only works for whichever detachment those models are part of. So you can't have overlapping feats and overlapping theme forces that will super complement or overpower things. They only work for those specific models part of that warlock warcaster's detachment. So once you and your opponent have decided on a scenario and have made your army lists featuring 2 to 3 detachments, as I mentioned, 3 detachments are recommended, you would set up the board. So table setup is just like any other Warmachine game. However, it's played on a 4x6 table instead of a 4x4 because there's just not enough room otherwise. So it just goes through the same basic setup. You know, you would roll to see who's your first player, who's your second player. You'd determine your deployment zones. Deployment zones are the same for 7 and 10, being the first and second. And everything else just plays out as normal for the table setup. There might be some special rules or special setups for the Unbound scenarios, but you're going to have to buy the no quarter issue to get all those specialties and all those alternate rules. So as soon as you're ready to start the game plays just like Company of Iron. So the first turn of the game, or the first round I should say, is already determined and rolled off for at the start of the game. So whoever's first player, whoever's second player, that determines the initiative. Every round after the first, you can roll to seize initiative. So just like Company of Iron, you would roll, and the highest gets to seize initiative. Theme Force bonuses don't apply to this, so don't be sneaky with that. However, there is a domination bonus for those who control one of the 24/18 territories on the map. For full rules on that, you're going to have to pick up the magazine, but it essentially gives you a +1 on your seize the initiative roll. Rounds are broken down into turns, and each turn consists of the standard maintenance control activation. However, it plays a little bit differently. At the start of a round, each player would do their maintenance, then each player would do their control, and then once both have completed their maintenance and control for all of their detachments, so that includes everything across the board, then the person whose current initiative it is activating one of their detachments. And once they've finished activating all the models in their one detachment, it passes to the next player who activates one of their detachments, and so on and so forth, back and forth, until everybody has had a chance to activate all of their detachments at least once, and then that round ends, and you roll to seize initiative again. So it feels a little bit like Company of Iron, just on a grander scale. If by chance you happen to lose an entire detachment during the game, you can, just like Company of Iron, choose to pass your turn and have the opponent activate one of their detachments instead. With that said, you have to activate your remaining detachments within the entire round. So if you can't just keep passing and let your opponent do whatever, you have to activate all of your detachments at least once during the round. The one thing that is really different in the Unbound rules, which speeds up the game, I feel like, and I wish that it was kind of part of the smaller Warmachine Hordes games. You don't allocate focus until you are going to activate that detachment. So you don't have to do it at the start of the round. You would do it at the start of the turn you're going to activate that detachment. In addition, shaking, knockdown, and stationary effects occur at the start of the turn in which that model activates. It doesn't happen during the maintenance or control as it would. It's only during the turn that you activate that detachment. In addition, if you're looking to pick up some multiplayer games and having they cover 3-player and 4-player setup, you're going to need quite larger tables. I'm not going to post up how to set those up. You're going to have to pick up the magazine to check that out, but they have some really good multiplayer scenarios for it, and some really good, just clean table setups that you can use to have these really fun battles with. So I hope you found that very helpful for the Unbound setup rules. I don't want to give too much away. There's a lot more content in the magazine to cover with that. But if you're looking for the special scenarios and special rules, you're going to have to pick up the magazine to get the entire experience of Warmachine and Hordes Unbound. Section 7 of the book is Theme Forces, Forces of the TrollBlood Northkin. Theme Forces is the biggest section of this issue. As with the first issue, it continues the tradition of outlining literally everything about the highlighted forest. In this issue, they cover the Northkin, the hardy and drink-heavy trollkin from the north of Western Immorin. This section contains everything you want to know about how they live, their origins, how they formed following the Southern United Krell's example, the importance of their drink, how they survive in the harsh north, their life and culture behind raiding, and what weapons, equipment, and gear they bring into battle, and what the Krell stones really mean to them. In the middle of all that, there's a 4-page spread of heroes of the Northkin that details new and old heroes' history, both past and present. The Theme Force Northkin also has my favorite thing about No Quarters, alternate paint schemes and background on the different Krells and how to paint them. I love that content. I love being able to pick something unique from within the Theme Force that they outline and paint them up a little different, have my own spin on the traditional take. The last few pages of the Northkin Theme Force features the Company of Iron related acquisition costs and a nice little surprise of battle conditions, aka weather, special terrain, and their accompanying rules, plus 3 Northkin battle scenarios. It's chock full of just meaty content for Warmachine and Hordes battles. Within those sections, one particular scenario caught my attention, and it's something I hope they continue to release in the pages of No Quarter Prime. They have a 4-player cooperative battle where the players battle against a giant rampaging beast from the north. You can use any gargantuan that you want, but it's a 4-player co-op battle. I have not seen a 4-player co-op scenario before for a Warmachine setting game, but I'm eager to see what others they might have in store for the future. And if this is something that they want to continue to do, I wholeheartedly support it, as a lot of times, sometimes you get some players together or you finish a large gaming session, you want to do something fun and relaxing. These are the type of scenarios that I'm looking for. So here's my final thoughts on issue 2 of No Quarter Prime. Issue 2 of No Quarter Prime has 6 great sections in the magazine. One falls short. There's a lot of great fluff and story content for veterans and noobs alike. Privateer Press also continues and delivers on their promise to expand their Company of Iron and Warmachine Hordes game content with new scenarios, new models, and new rules on how to play. I particularly enjoyed the addition of a cooperative 4-player battle scenario and the battlefield conditions. My favorite part of these magazines, which really isn't big in the grand scheme of the magazine, but as a lore junkie and variety craver, the alternate paint schemes here outlined for Legion, Menoth, and TrollBloods just add so much to the background of these armies that you think you knew from the past. They had great content. They had great ideas for expanding armies, building your own fluff, building your own story behind your models, which a lot of the gaming community does not do, unfortunately. With all that said, I am a little disappointed in 2 things. The first being there's no IKRPG content in this issue. I was really looking forward to more content to expand the Iron Kingdoms universe with more adventures and settings, and I was hoping each issue would bring something to the tabletop with it. The second big disappointment, which I expressed in the review of issue 1, the table ready in 5 is really friggin' useless. It looks like this section won't be in the next issue, thankfully. It sounded like they are concluding it. But I'm really hoping it's replaced with a good hobby content section with, making terrain or modding models or creating your own Iron Kingdoms characters or running Iron Kingdoms games. Just something else that isn't a half-assed painting tutorial that feels like it should have been and could have been a clearer, more broken down blog content. So you're probably asking yourself, should I grab issue 2? Yes, you should, 100%. I 100% support getting issue 2, and I'm really looking forward to issue 3. I know there was some spoilers recently on their Company of Iron live stream this past week. I'm not going to say what they are because I don't want to breed false hope, but it definitely sounds like some great stuff's coming from them, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you guys and gals for coming aboard Riker's Iron for this No Quarter Prime review. We will be back for issue 3 of No Quarter Prime.